Today on Let's Discuss, we have a very important issue, which I think is concerning a lot of people around the world. Before COVID-19, travel and tourism was one industry that was untouched. The world economy, it accounts for 10% of the global GDP and more than 320 million jobs worldwide. That's the kind of quantum we are talking about where we talk about the travel industry. But the last 2 years have literally put 100 million jobs at risk. The tourism dependent countries, I don't know when they are going to recover because they are likely going to feel the impact of what is to come for a longer time. When we talk about India, hospitality and travel and tourism has got a bad impact. It's been tremendously affected. Now today, as a part of a very important discussion is revenge travel. Is it for real? And what repercussions follow? Okay. For this discussion today, we have a panel who is sitting in the core of the industry, who are people who probably are affected, probably not. We are going to find out as we talk. Our first panelist for today is Mr. Nitin John. Mr. Nitin John is the director at RIA Travels and Tours. He is involved in the air consolidation and the corporate travel management, also in the training in travel and tourism and student travel and travel technology. So he is a very important part of the travel industry. Our second panelist for today is Mr. Samir MC. Samir is a managing director at Fortune Park Hotels Limited. He plays a key role in providing efficient service to the customers as well as the promoters, and brings with him an incredible strong knowledge and experience as both Fortune Hotels and Welcome Heritage brands, and continues to increase their formidable presence in India. And third is our founder of Biplab World and author Abhishek Talwar. He's also a travel writer and an environmentalist, an environmental enthusiast. I must correct myself. His children's books, travel vlogs, and writing focuses on nurturing the environment and protecting the nature. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming on the webinar today. Right. So, I am going to come first to you, Nitin. Since you're connected closely with the travel industry and as a tour operator, how bad has the last 2 years been? What has it been like?
It's been really tough. The travel industry has never seen this, I think, in the last 50 years. So the first time everyone has to change everything, be it the airline, be it the hotel. For the consumer also, it's been really tough. And be it the embassies, everything being shut is really tough. So every day it's a new challenge. So for us, our workload has certainly increased in the sense like, we have to learn new things. So we guide customers wherein certain countries are open. Then we come to know certain countries are shut. So even a place like Turkey, which was open just for 1 day for Indians, they're again closed. So this is a country. So it's been very tough. There's been a huge manpower curtailed from everyone in the travel industry. So it's been very tough on the staffing part also. But whosoever is smart enough or who's aggressive, they can survive. So that's the condition as of now.
Yeah. Do you think the pandemic has changed the dynamics of the industry? Or you don't know where we stand?
No, dynamics has completely changed. Even like the financial industry also is in a dilemma whether to recognize the industry, or the underwriters have to think twice. Whatever was the method to forecast the travel industry growth and everything, they have to change everything now. So whatever they have decided for last 50 years, they have to change everything. So completely this industry has changed.
Samir, I'm going to pose the same question to you. Hotels have been drastically affected. You tell me, first, I want to hear from you, how has the last 2 years been for the hospitality industry?
So,
we've been in the industry for a while, and I'm just taking my own personal experience. So, uh, been around for a little more than a couple of decades, and over the years, apart from the fair share of joyous experiences we've had, some great positive experiences we've had. We've also had some challenges, So we've been through a series of challenges in wherever we have been able to work. So if I look at my own personal experience, of course, I've had the experience of handling multiple levels of crisis, whether it is, individual cases in a hotel, could be somebody falling ill, unfortunate cases of deaths, etc., or even larger macro issues like, for example, part of my career I've spent in Southeast Asia, and we've had to go through, say, endemics like SARS or MERS in Korea. We've had floods in Thailand. Was there right after the coup in Thailand. So, and in one of the stints I was doing in India, which was looking after a regional role, we had an earthquake in Nepal, and which affected our business as well. So we used to think that we have seen it all and learned it all, but the last year and a half has definitely changed that thinking in most of us as hoteliers, right? So this crisis is something which I can say none of us has experienced ever before. So anybody who's working in the industry will probably say the same thing, because nothing of similar scale has been experienced by the industry over the last 30, 40, 50 years. And that's the scale of how bad it's been, right? So clearly it's shaken us up. Exactly like you started off saying, that 10% approximately GDP contribution comes from travel tourism. Similar numbers in employment ratios. So definitely has been a fairly challenging one. I think the biggest challenge for the industry has to be staying afloat, survive, because when you have people just not traveling, there is nothing else you can do, right? Because that's what we do well when people travel. So it's been a tough one, I must say. Of course, we have had many learnings from it. Some of it, so you asked, are the changes here to stay? I'm sure we'll talk about it a little more in detail. But many of it has impacted our thinking. Some of them will go back to what we were in. I mean, we hear these concepts of new normal, revenge tourism, etc., but not necessarily that everything will stick, because we are human beings and we don't like change all over, right? So we will like to go back to some of those earlier behaviors which we were used to. And hence, we will definitely see a lot of transition in this industry moving ahead. But a lot of them might also go back to what it was before the pandemic.
Right. Abhishek, coming to you as as a travel influencer firstly, and then an environmentalist, what according to you is revenge travel? Is it for real? Are people out there much more than ever with the current situation?
So, Nidhi, first up, even I don't remember the name of the publication, but recently someone reached out to write an article on revenge travel. And I remember the first thing I wrote in that article was that I take strong umbrage to the term revenge travel. I wouldn't call it revenge travel. I'd call it more, it's certainly not about revenge. Look, let's understand one thing. As humans, it's built into our genetics, into our basic instincts to travel. Either it is for survival, or it is for food, or it is for adventure. We travel. That's in our nature. The only thing that differs is the frequency with which we travel. There are people who are homebound, who are happy with their surroundings. And for them, the frequency is lower. And then there are people like me who are not satisfied unless they're traveling at least 300 days in a year. The fact remains, is revenge travel something that is here to stay? If we were to use that term for whatever it's worth, I would say what's happening now is we're seeing a phenomenon where suddenly everyone is having to travel at the same time. Like Nitin quite rightly mentioned, embassies are shut. You don't know which country is open. You don't know which country is open. Samir also indicated that a lot of businesses survive only to travel. But if people aren't allowed to travel, what do you do? And then suddenly, if a window opens up to travel, everyone and their mother-in-law is going to hit the roads. And there's very little that anyone can do about it. So it's really that as a phenomenon that we're witnessing.
Right. Nitin, what is your take on? I know Ria Travels does deal a lot with corporate travel as well. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, we have a division wherein we handle only the corporates. So that is
Yeah,
also a
and
pretty big segment for us.
yes, I remember this out of my travel days. But how has that been in the last 2 years? Does it
Uh,
even exist in the last 2 years, honestly speaking?
yeah, so for me, as I think so even for Samir also, corporate has been quite a disappointment because that's one sector wherein for the safety purpose plus on the financial gains also, most of the corporates have curtailed down on their travel part because we usually deal with a lot of these IT companies. So they have
Right.
completely given up on their travel part. So for them, for the IT companies, their customers are now, accepting the fact that they don't want any of the project managers or anyone to come and sit with them in their office.
Yeah.
They are happy doing the same thing online. So the that travel has come down. Even the pharma companies have curtailed down on their travel spend. So usually all these big companies have cut down on their travel spend a lot. So corporate the spend has gone down drastically.
I'm sure. And you know what the worry with
Sorry, this is
corporate is?
just a
Yeah.
thought here, Nitin, while you were speaking. Considering most
Mm.
of us aren't going to our own offices, it's a bit far-fetched that we're going to go to a client's office off-site.
Yeah.
So I guess that kind of sums
And
it all up.
the constant worry of taking a flight. And I mean, you know what I feel like? Travel might bounce back. Luxury travel and the leisure travel might bounce back, but will corporate bounce back that easy? Samir, would you like to add to this? Do you think? I mean, Fortune Hotels, I know, has a huge chunk with corporate travel. It was one of the favored corporate hotels for a good price point as well. Do you think it's going to come back, or are you all already making contingency plans?
So, I mean, first is, we're going through a pandemic, and pandemic for sure has changed people's mindsets, right? It's affected people's thinkings because if everybody is seeing somebody in the family, somebody in the friend circle, social circle, colleagues being affected, it is bound to have an impact on travel intent, right? And especially when it
Right.
comes to corporate or work-related travel. Add to the fact that most companies are also taking a very cautious approach, rightly so. It should be the way that, don't go out if it's not required, unless it's absolutely essential. We don't want anybody to travel, is what most corporates have taken as an approach. And I think that is probably the best approach to take while the pandemic is at its peak, right? Uh, Having said that, and exactly to sort of echo Nitin's points on how corporate travel has been affected. For sure, we've also seen corporate travel being affected pretty much across all our locations. And like you said, yes, a large chunk of our portfolio is primarily focused on corporate travel because we are across most key cities. Having said that, what we also realize is that we can actually break it into two elements. So there is this first element which has been heavily affected, which is the key cities or the large metro cities where travel is primarily dominated by A, inbound business travel, B, large corporations whose executives travel within the country but across key cities, and C, I would say the biggest sector, exactly like Nitin said, is IT, ITES. So those three are probably the biggest drivers, and followed by, say, corporate meetings. So just meetings from corporate segment. Yes, that's probably been the most biggest impact which we as an industry have faced. Having said that, as we have gone through two phases, what we also realize is that between the period of phase one and phase two, when there was a little bit of a decline or a downturn in the number of cases and customer confidence was coming back, we saw that travel recovery into corporate locations outside the metro cities was much faster than the metro cities. And that's primarily driven by the fact that most travel into the non-metro cities is driven by mid-level or SME sort of companies, PSUs, etc., and who definitely have a need to travel because there is projects happening around those locations. And hence we were able to actually see a difference in how the recovery patterns were visible in
Right.
tier A cities versus say tier 2 or tier 3 cities. So that I would say, would it continue? I'm pretty confident that while people will continue going to, encourage work from home, etc., eventually travel will come back. Yes, it might not come back to the same levels because people will make adjustments in how many trips do you make before you close a project, etc. But
Right.
as part of being in a country which is growing fairly well, and which has very high growth potential in future, I think corporate travel is bound to come back. Yes, the time frame is what is a little bit of an unknown. Would it be in 6 months time or 12 or 18? Is definitely dependent on multiple other factors.
Optimism is really a good breather here, because that is one thing that always is something that is a thought is, I mean, luxury travel will bounce back, but corporate is always a doubt in people's minds. So I'm sure this is definitely a good optimism vibe here. Abhishek, coming to you as a naturist, I know you can comment well on the green travel that has suddenly come up. There's a concept of suddenly people want to be in the outdoors. People want to be more on. I know of people who've never been on a trek in their life are suddenly trekking every weekend. Do you think there's a sudden upsurge in green travel?
So Nidhi, again, I'll share from personal experience. So I remember in 2010, 2012, when my wife and I started actually traveling with our kids. So it's not like we weren't traveling before that, but when we actually started doing our road trips, which took us 15 days, 20 days, covering 4,000 to 5,000 kilometers, a lot of our friends and acquaintances would turn around and say that, you're very lucky you're able to do this. We're unable to do this because of our jobs or because our kids can't handle it or families won't allow it, and so on and so forth. What's happened is the pandemic has suddenly forced all of us to come to a hard stop and take stock with our life. And people have realized that they've got a lot of time on hand. So everyone is now wanting to go out and, within whatever ability or limits they have, go out and explore what's possible and what's not possible. And I think that is what is seen in a huge uptick in a lot of people going out and trying, say, trekking or hiking or exploring forts or nature walks for the first time. One can hope and wish and pray that this is a trend that is here to stay, because if that happens, a lot of people will then really discover the vast diversity of ecology that we have as a country, and it'll hopefully bring a lot more attention to it rather than the niche industry or the niche business or niche sector that it is seen as now. Although I wouldn't be too optimistic. I think a lot of us, like Samir said, would like to go back to our good old habits once things go back to some semblance of normalcy. But yeah, that certainly
Nice.
is a huge uptake in that's happening. And like I said, it is primarily driven by the opportunity and the time being available today.
Right. Nitin, as a director of a travel company that is known for its international holidays, how does it feel in the last, especially 1.5 year, where every country is literally blacklisting India to be traveling to them? How does it, I mean, what's the contingency plans for RIA travels in a situation like this?
So, and it's really sad the way our everyone has blacklisted India, citing the Delta variant. But and also the government also rarely supports the travel industry. So, and the last, I think, so 1.5 year, we have been having that bubble flights and all those concepts, wherein even for the airline to maintain the rules and regulations is very difficult. But there was a huge surge, maybe since last September onwards, for Maldives and UAE. Even Seychelles also did a little better. Even Kenya also did good numbers. So wherever there was a supply, people were ready to take that. So like eco travel and everything is there. So wherever what options you can give it to the consumer, they are ready to take it. So even now also, Europe is opening up for Indians. So the France is opening up, Germany, Netherlands. So you can see a good surge now coming up next 2-3 months.
Again, a good optimism to hear, because I just had my own family who was booked for US had to cancel their tickets now, because obviously they're still not being allowed for the luxury travel side of it, the leisure travel side of it.
Yeah.
So do you think for US it's changing anytime soon, or no?
US, the problem is the government has changed compared to the last year. If it was
Right.
the Republican, you would have got an entry to US, but the Democrats are more cautious. They take the opinion from the CDC. So as far as I know, and the cases are increasing very high in US. So I don't think, other than the student visa and the H-1B category, others won't be allowed for this year at least.
Right. Samir, with the stopping of international travel, I think the ones who benefited the most is domestic. The domestic hospitality groups have benefited a lot. Do you think so? I do have a different layer to it, but I want your answer to this first.
No, I think the simple way to look at it is, what's the deficit, right? So who's got the deficit? So we get an inbound traveler number of around 11 million to 12 million a year, right? I mean,
Right.
of course, those numbers might be debated by the knowledgeable in terms of saying how much of it is actually leisure travel, how much of it is returning Indians, etc. But let's say for this discussion, it's 11 to 12 million. Our outbound numbers, and Nitin will probably be more accurate than me, is probably double of that or more than double. It's 24, 25 million in terms of outbound tourism. So all those tourists definitely have this opportunity, exactly like Abhishek said, to discover India the way they have not imagined. And I must say that, if you just start counting the number of locations which you would like to go and put onto a bucket list, either which way, you will probably find a few hundred numbers, right? And especially if you're talking about things which are close to nature, close to culture, heritage, huge number of options for us just in the country. So for sure, that's the case. To add to that, I think in the short term, there is definitely a little bit of an apprehension to get onto flights. Forget long haul flights, just even short haul flights, people are more wary. They would just rather behave like what Abhishek does, put the kids, dog, bags, everything into the car and drive 4 to 6 hours and get to a location of their choice. And hence you would see in the last few months between wave 1 and wave 2, we saw a fair amount of demand in the northern hill stations, mainly driven by key cities in the north. And similarly in the south hill stations or beaches, demand driven by, key cities like Bangalore, Chennai, Bombay, etc. So I would say, yes, that's going to continue for a while, because exactly like Abhishek mentioned, Nitin mentioned, that people love to travel, right? So they have to travel. You can't keep them cooped up in homes forever. So that's what we are also looking forward to.
Abhishek, as a traveler, do you think there is suddenly a little more upsurge for the villas and the Airbnbs over hotels, or you don't think there's anything like that?
So Nidhi, I'm obviously no expert on which direction the industry is moving in. A lot of what I say is anecdotal. And since a lot of my writing is fiction, so please take what I say with a pinch of salt. But I'll again share from my own experience. Like last December, thankfully, with easing out after the first wave of COVID, we traveled all the way from Mumbai till Uttarakhand and back. We were on the road for about 20 days at that point in time. And I had something very interesting to observe at that point, which I hope answers your question and kind of adds to what Samir is also saying. On the one hand, so when we stayed in Delhi, we had to halt in Delhi for a night before we headed out into the Himalayas. We stayed at a hotel, at a 5-star hotel at the airport. And believe you me, we paid a price of 4,000 rupees a night at a 5-star hotel in AeroCity, which included breakfast and dinner. Crazy and unheard of. I mean, 4,000 rupees is probably what that guy would have charged us just for, coming and looking at the dinner buffet otherwise, during normal times. Move on from there and look at popular destinations like a Corbett or a Nainital or a Mussoorie or a Dehradun, absolutely overflowing with people. I mean, the administration were at the wits' end just to manage the sheer influx of people coming in. Prices skyrocketing. a typical hotel, and you're saying, is there a preference for an Airbnb or a villa over a hotel? Today, people are willing to take anything that they can get because everything is sold out. The whole concept of weekends is out of the window. People are traveling on weekdays, weekends, it doesn't matter because people have to still log in and connect remotely and work, which they're doing from wherever they're doing. So they're having staycations, they're having vocations, or whatever new nomenclature you want to call it. However, interestingly, there's something else which we observe. So while your traditional usual suspects are getting all the travelers, you move a little away from these destinations and the world is still the way it was. So while we passed through Dehradun, it was crazy. But we got to a place called Kanatal, which is something that's not really explored by a lot of people. It was still as unexplored as it was because people probably haven't yet discovered that you can go beyond there. You get to Nainital, it's crazy. 50 kilometers from there, you get to a place called Mukteshwar, it's half empty. 15 kilometers from Mukteshwar, you get to a village called Parwada, which has got some brilliant resorts and homestays, completely empty. So is there a question of
I'm sorry, I'm butting in, but Abhishek, don't you think people in the minds, it is more about not having to interact with anybody, and that is why being in a villa is safer than being in a hotel where you are interacting with so many people in the
Nidhi,
lobbies or in the buffets?
See, we need to understand we're a country with a 130 crore population. So even if a small fraction of that population decides that we're going to travel, since we have the opportunity, everything is going to fill up. Okay, of course, I would say there is a small discerning and growing majority of people that are looking for very offbeat destinations, but you'd find that these are people who were any which ways doing it even before the pandemic. It is not that people are suddenly discovering villas in offbeat destinations. And again, I'm speaking from the people that I've interacted with, and as a travel writer and travel influencer, I interact with a lot of people. It's obviously on a one-on-one basis. A lot of people that I know and a lot of people that I don't know, but just reach out to me that, hey, we'd like to travel, where can we go? And what I've realized is that the people who are happy to go to a traditional hill station or beach destination, like Samir said, still prefer to do that. It's only the people who were doing it earlier, going to offbeat destinations earlier, that are doing it now more frequently for longer durations and more aggressively. There would be a small spillover, but I personally don't see a very drastic change in that behavior.
Right. One thing which has emerged really beautifully in the last 2 years is the charm of domestic travel, which somewhere Indians had completely, forgotten or given a backseat because there was so much of the hype around traveling abroad that it was understated to be traveling in your own country. And it's suddenly so much more open to realize, there is some lot of beautiful places in India that you could visit. Nitin, do you think once international travel opens up again, there might be a downfall in domestic tourism, or you think this new trend of people suddenly realizing that, incredible India is here to stay?
Nidhi, see, again, all depends on the supply and demand. So demand is too huge as of now. So the kind of supply which is going out in the market, you can check any airline, any hotel, everything is full. So till the time supply doesn't come back to normalcy, everything will be full. So you can't expect anything to have a downside anytime soon.
Right. No, but what I mean is, so for example, class Indian, at one point, it was more important to go to Singapore than it would be important to go to Himachal. And now there's a sudden change that you places which you had not even explored, and you suddenly have realized, oh my God, we have a lot of beauty here. Why were we bothering to run out of the country at the drop of a hat? Do you think this culture, and I just take an opinion, I know it's not something that you can give as a hard fact, but do you think there's this domestic upsurge is going to stay? Or do you think it will again turn back to what it was, where international travel was considered to be a notch above?
So International travel will surge back, but domestic, like wherein these villa properties and all, before people never used to hear about these things. Everyone used to go through luxury brands or branded properties. So the villas and all will continue. So there won't be a downside for them. But yeah, so so it all depends how the market behaves and how everything works out. So, and once the confidence is built in the consumer, there will be search, like, how the corporate travel is not working out now. So once corporates have the confidence, that will again boom. So domestic travel is here to stay. There won't be a thing that, people forget about it. There might be less frequency, but still people will take it since they have tested the product.
Right. Samir, how is it with the new normal for hotels to handle? The all the hygiene rules and the protocols and the sanitizations, how is it to deal with as a part of the industry? So, like, my heart goes out when I see the amount of expectations that people suddenly have from hotels in terms. Is it as an insider?
So I think if I try to break it into two parts, right? So the first is that from a guest expectation perspective, right? For sure, the guest has suddenly become a lot more aware of the hygiene requirements. More than anything else, it's just the awareness. So there's a lot more awareness. And to add to that, moments of hygiene have actually become fairly big defining points in what we used to call moments of, earlier we used to say that, great service leads to moments of truth, or moments of truth is when you deliver those great service elements. But today it's moments of trust, right? So, and that moments of trust come from being comfortable when I travel to some hotel with my family or with my colleagues, that, this hotel will have absolutely good standards of hygiene and safety. So when we at Fortune Hotels were trying to, sort of work out what will be the expectations, what will be, things which will change, we realized that it's not very different for us in many ways, because if I look at many of those hygiene factors, we were already doing it. It was probably just that we had to package it a little more, right? But, weren't hotels keeping their rooms or their public areas safe and sanitized and clean? Yes, absolutely we were. But did we ever keep hand sanitizers or masks in the lobby? No, we didn't, right? So we had to add those elements to it. Of course, as a company, we work under a very strong culture and values of making sure that we live up to the trust. And in Fortune, we sort of launched this program called Safe Stays at Fortune, which was primarily, driven around 10 elements of what a guest or an employee would go through, because we knew that it's not just the guest, it's also the employee, and it's also this whole third-party support system we have, which is basically the vendors, the suppliers, contractors, etc. So how do we make sure that each part of these three stakeholder groups are managed well to keep those hygiene factors in place? So yes, it did take some effort, but thanks to the depth of knowledge and the passion the team has, it was not very difficult. It took us a few weeks to understand what would be the new expectations. And to be honest, we were one of the first companies to be able to launch a program like this. In fact, we took it a notch higher by saying that we're going to now start getting our hotels certified under an ISO 9001 2015 program. So we actually have 9 hotels who have already been certified, another 9 going through it in this quarter. And, that's the aim, to get every hotel. So because it's just about making sure that rigor and discipline stays through. Would that be called the new normal? In a way, yes. But many of those things were already being done. So it's a mix of both. Some of them, I am not, to be honest, I don't have an absolute clear understanding of how long will those things last. For example, how long will people be expected to wear masks? We don't know. So at this stage, we are assuming that, you will be wearing masks in the near future. So we continue doing that. But, at some stage, we might probably take a different view, as say Nitin was mentioning about how US took a different view that masks are not required. And then you'll stop putting, spare masks in the lobby, right? So some of those might go back to what was pre-pandemic. But yes, you're right. There has been an element of change, which has, had to be thought through. We had to put in a fair amount of effort, had to go through a full process of educating our colleagues and bringing that awareness in. And it's not easy to make sure you maintain it, because there are various elements, and every hotel, if you have 100 employees or 100 colleagues, that means there are 100 touch points. So we of course have brought in checks and controls to make sure it happens through constant trainings, monitoring mechanisms. We have audit processes on a regular basis. We have developed an app to for our managers to audit it at hotel level and monitor it. So we do that, yes, and it will stay for a while, is what we would see.
Because what was worrisome in the middle of job cuts and losing staff and salary cuts was suddenly a double workload. And don't you think that affected the quality of a property when, the workload is double where hygiene is concerned, and there's been a backward migration where a lot of the hospitality staff is concerned. Was it too much of a fix of a situation to be in?
I'll be lying if I say no, it was not a problem, right? So I think yes, it was. But let's be realistic. It's a pandemic. We are going through something which most of us, like I started off saying, we have not seen it before. We have not experienced. So we've been learning on our feet. And I say this for pretty much everybody in the industry. So we've been learning on our feet, right? So and we've gone through multiple changes. It's not probably been easy for the colleagues, and I really feel proud about the hotelier colleagues who have done a fantastic job of just showing that great resilience and attitude over the last year and a half, and that's commendable. It's definitely been difficult for hotel companies to and when I talk about individual hotels, to just stay afloat, and then to add in all these elements has been tough. But that's the resilience the industry has, and they continue doing that and continue displaying some really great positive attitudes in spite of the challenges, and that's something which I'm confident will take us through the next few months and hopefully to a little bit of more normalcy.
Great. Abhishek, your words on this. Do you think green travel is here to stay, or do you think it's going to have a downsurge once international?
Nidhi, personally, I think there will most certainly be a downsurge once international travels opens up. There are no two ways about it. But like Nitin said, that downsurge doesn't mean it will go away. Okay, it's something which people have discovered. A lot of people will still go back to it. The frequency will go down, and honestly, that's not really such a bad thing to happen. I'll give you an example which is not connected to this at all, but it kind of substantiates what I'm saying. Recently was the World Tiger Day. I think it was 2 days back, if I'm not mistaken. Now, 11. Again, this is a report I read. My numbers could be off, but say about 11 wildlife sanctuaries in India have been certified by the World Wildlife Fund because these are practicing exemplary processes in terms of nurturing the tiger and protecting the tiger within their reserves. Interestingly, not one of the top wildlife sanctuaries or tiger sanctuaries in India made it to that list. There's no Corbett, there is no Ranthambore, there is no Madhumalai, there is no Pench, there is no Bandhavgarh, there is no Tadoba. It's all the second rung and the third rung sanctuaries that have made it there. And that makes you sit back and wonder, why do you think something like this has happened? For the simple reason that tourists don't flock to these other places. We're not going there with our plastics and our mobile phones and our loud music and our, disco parties at 10:30 in the night in the middle of the jungle. So the animals aren't getting disturbed. The ecology isn't getting disturbed, and those guys are winning awards. The guys who are making the money are not winning any awards. So it's probably not a bad thing, but it will certainly go down. The other upside to it will be, I'll give you another example. I was speaking with an acquaintance who's got a homestay very close to Mumbai. It's a farm, which he's been letting out for the last 3 odd years. A 5-bedroom villa, pretty luxurious, and we've been speaking for us to go out there and do a review for the place. On an average, he would charge anywhere between 20 to 30,000 rupees a night for the entire villa. He's now selling it for 85,000 rupees a night for a 5-bedroom villa. Are you kidding me? And he says, I've got a 2-month waiting list. Okay, so is that sustainable? Is that here to stay? It's certainly not here to stay, and neither is it sustainable. Okay, so there will be a correction. He will still have a similar occupancy, but at a much lower realization. Likewise, and Samir would know, we would probably be able to throw more light on this. Now, Welcome Heritage will probably continue to enjoy the similar occupancy at say a Pahalgam or at Dalhousie or Dharamshala or wherever else you guys are located. But probably there would be some correction in the ARRs. Whereas thankfully, the Fortune hotels,
True.
your business hotels, the occupancy will also improve, and let's all hope and pray that the ARR also improves. International travel will definitely take on and it'll take off, and it'll take off with a vengeance. Trust me, everyone is waiting with their passports ready, just waiting कि कब मेरा visa लगे, कब मैं ticket लूँ और कब मैं जाऊँ.
Absolutely. Nitin, a few closing words from you on a couple of things here. One, what kind of revival strategies is Ria Travels, or what kind of revival strategies is the travel companies in general looking at when things do come back to normal, or when things could bounce back? Can you throw a little more light on?
Nidhi, as far as travel companies are concerned, they all are holding back. The only issue with most of the companies that everyone were specialized in certain specific sectors or specialized fields. So with this pandemic, people realize those specialization doesn't make much of a sense now. They have to be involved in various sectors. So be it big corporate companies also, they've been dealing with the leisure customers or the walk-in customers. So things have changed. So wherever people can see there's an opportunity for revenue, they are making big money. If you see even the leisure also, especially during marriage season, travel companies did make money. So there is a downside and there's upside. So people who make use of it, they can survive in this market. So main thing is the principals are not won't be that interested to cater to the travel companies much. They would like to see more of a direct consumer interaction. So then the travel companies have to think how they can make revenue on what kind of options they can give it to the consumers. So once you may build a confidence with the consumers, then you can see a good surge in the demand.
Do you think international travel is going to be back with a vengeance, like domestic travel is going through right now?
International will pick up like anything. But again, the main issue right now, if you see for the current month or the next month, the main travel is happening for essential travel. So people who have been, especially student travel, there's a huge student travel which is happening. So that would be the first priority. So there are people who have already started moving to Switzerland and all, since the Swiss embassy opened up first before the other Europeans. The people have already started moving out to Switzerland.
I actually know so many people who are right now in Switzerland because that was the first country to literally open up in Europe.
Yeah. So other countries are opening up first week of August. So international will be huge. The only thing is the pricing for that product. Are people ready to take that product at the current pricing? Is what we have to see.
That's actually a very good point, because nobody thought about the pricing point, and somewhere purchasing power has taken a hit in India in the last 2 years. So there definitely might be a correction in picture coming up there as well. So yeah, that's a great point. Samir, what do you think about this? Do you think the domestic travel is here to stay? And do you think it's the complete upsurge is not just a fad, and it is the new normal for the hospitality industry in India?
Well, people are going to continue traveling, right? So as much as there is, a little bit of upsurge in travel to leisure locations, but also let's not forget a lot of people have not traveled even during this time because there has been either some parts of the family affected, friends affected, and hence they have not traveled. So travel is bound to continue. It's continuing to improve. The good part is that there is more awareness on domestic destinations. Plus the fact that, the way to get through those destinations in terms of connectivity, whether it's by flight or by roads. I mean, look at the quality of roads being improved over the last few years, and I'm sure Abhishek would have a lot to talk about it, given that
I can go on for 1 hour on that subject alone.
driving trips for the last 10 plus years. And he can explain how the same road he's probably driven on 5 times in the last 10 years has changed each time he's gone on. So that's all really great, encouraging factors for us as a country. And definitely, I'm one of those people who believe that India has so much to offer. I've done close to half of my career in other countries, mainly Southeast Asia, and hence I've seen the potential of tourism and travel, given that Southeast Asia thrives on tourism. But also having compared that to what we can offer in terms of heritage and nature and culture is just tremendous, right? So for sure, I would love to see it growing definitely in future.
That is actually a very valid point. And I'm sure, Abhishek, in your closing statement, do you want to add on how you have suddenly seen a change in the last 2 years where road travel in India is concerned? And give us a closing statement on
so
that.
Nidhi, that would be stating the obvious. What I'd rather say is, I hope, is this here to say, and like Samir and Nitin said, and even I said in my previous remarks, definitely domestic travel is here to say. We will see a correction in pricing. Samir would know better, but I have a sense that we will also see a phase of consolidation in the industry, because the ridiculous real estate prices, especially in certain cities at which projects have been created, the realization from renting out of those assets will not pay for those prices. So there is going to be a change. There will be management changes, ownership changes. I see that consolidation coming. But to me, as someone for whom the environment and nature and learning about culture and heritage is so close to my heart, I would say this is a great opportunity for us to wake up and smell the coffee. Like Samir pointed out, having worked in Southeast Asia, and that's part of the world that I've also traveled to. Not extensively, but to some bit. The biggest difference is the way they package everything. Our packaging is not pathetic. Our packaging is non-existent. Now, with this upsurge in interest in destinations within India, I can give you umpteen examples. If I were to just pick up one, let's say Ranthambore Fort, and we recently did a video log, a vlog on that fort. The place is tremendous and its condition is pathetic. And the Archaeological Survey of India has an office inside the fort.
Seriously?
Yeah. So that's how bad it is. It's not like work isn't going on. Certainly work is going on, but work is going on at a pace where, probably a snail could outstrip them 3 times over before they get anything done. That's how abysmally slow things are. So maybe this is a wake-up call with more interest in domestic travel. The authorities or people who are in a position to take a decision on these things wake up and say, hey, you know what? We're getting in a lot of revenue because of domestic travel happening. There's a lot of interest. Let's work on building the infrastructure and on rightfully showcasing the culture, heritage, and monuments that we've got. Let's at some point in time wake up and say that there is more to India than the Taj Mahal. That's all one can hope and pray.
Yeah. I think the one thing that we have got out of today is, I'm sure Nitin would still want the international travel back, because that's where the moolah lies for the travel companies. But on the whole, I think one thing that the pandemic has taught us, all the revenge travel and the green travel concepts aside, is, like you said, wake up and smell the coffee. There's a lot that India can offer, which was somewhere underrated. And this phase has just made us realize what our country can offer if we just look towards it. Thank you so much, Nitin. Thank you so much, Samir. And thank you so much, Abhishek, for all the insights that you'll offered today. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to love watching all the different perspectives that came in over here. Thank you, guys.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.